The Georgia sun beat down mercilessly on Fort Benning as Captain Maria Ramirez stepped out of her rental car. After 18 months in a classified location she couldn't even name, the familiar sight of an American military base should have felt like coming home. Instead, her stomach churned with an anxiety she hadn't felt since her first day of basic training 15 years ago. She smoothed down her army dress uniform, checking that her ribbons were perfectly aligned. The uniform felt strange after so long in civilian clothes, operating in shadows where rank and ribbons meant nothing. But today, she was back in the official world, summoned for a debriefing she didn't fully understand. The Ranger Training Brigade headquarters loomed before her. This wasn't her first time here, but it would be her first time facing questions about Operation Stillwater, a mission so classified that officially, it never happened. As she walked across the parking lot, a group of soldiers emerged from the building. Even from a distance, she could tell they were Delta Force operators. It was something in how they moved, controlled, alert, predatory. They wore civilian clothes, but their Oakley sunglasses and tactical boots gave them away. Maria kept her eyes forward, hoping to avoid interaction. She knew how these elite operators viewed regular Army, especially female officers who hadn't gone through their selection process. She'd dealt with their dismissive attitudes before. Well, what do we have here? The voice was loud, cocky. The group had changed direction to intercept her path. Maria stopped, maintaining her military bearing. 5 men, all in peak physical condition, all wearing the subtle arrogance that came with being part of America's most elite military unit. The one who'd spoken, tall, bearded, arms covered in tactical tattoos, looked her up and down with obvious disdain. His eyes lingered on her ribbons, particularly the Bronze Star and Purple Heart. "Look at this, boys," he said to his companions. Another desk jockey playing dress-up. "What's the matter, Captain? PowerPoint presentation run late?" His teammates chuckled. One of them, younger with a fresh scar across his jaw, added, "Bet she got that Bronze Star for exceptional Excel spreadsheet management." Maria remained silent, her face neutral. She'd learned long ago that engaging with this type only made things worse. "What unit are you with, Captain?" the bearded one pressed. "Let me guess, Human Resources. Finance Corps. Oh wait, I know, Public Affairs. You here to write a story about the real warriors?" "I'm with the 75th Ranger Regiment," Maria said quietly. That got a bigger laugh. "Rangers?" The bearded operator shook his head. "Sweetheart, wearing a Ranger tab doesn't make you a Ranger. Probably got it through some diversity quota program. What did they do, lower the standards so you could feel special?" Maria felt heat rise to her cheeks but kept her bearing. She couldn't tell them the truth, that she'd not only earned her tab legitimately but had gone on to complete missions that even Delta didn't know about. "I bet she's never even seen combat," another operator chimed in. "That Purple Heart probably came from a paper cut in the TOC. Or she tripped getting coffee for the real soldiers," the scarred one added. The bearded leader stepped closer, invading her personal space. "You know what bugs me? Soldiers like you walking around with ribbons you didn't earn, wearing a uniform you don't deserve. You're what's wrong with the new army. All show, no substance. Are you finished?" Maria asked calmly. "Oh, she speaks." He turned to his team with mock surprise. "Tell you what, Captain. Why don't you run along to whatever diversity seminar or sensitivity training you're here for? Leave the real military work to the professionals." Maria saw an opening to leave and took it, stepping around the group. But the bearded operator wasn't done. He called after her, loud enough for everyone in the parking lot to hear. "Remember folks, that's what passes for a warrior these days. They'll pin medals on anyone with the right demographics." The laughter followed her into the building. Maria kept her head high, her pace steady, even as her hands trembled slightly with suppressed anger. If only they knew. If only she could tell them about the caves in Pakistan, the mission that went sideways, the 5 hours she held a position alone against overwhelming odds while waiting for extraction. But she couldn't. Because soldiers like her, the ones who operated beyond even Delta's knowledge, didn't exist in any official record. Inside the building, she was directed to a secure conference room on the 3rd floor. As she waited for the elevator, she caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. Her uniform was immaculate, her ribbons properly arranged. But the Delta operators were right about one thing: the ribbons didn't tell the real story. They didn't show the classified commendations locked in a vault somewhere. They didn't reflect the missions that couldn't be acknowledged, the lives saved in operations that never happened. They didn't capture the 12-inch scar across her abdomen from when she'd been captured and tortured for 3 days before escaping and completing her mission anyway. The elevator doors opened, and Maria stepped inside. She had no idea why she'd been summoned here, pulled out of deep cover for this meeting. But she had a feeling her carefully guarded secrets were about to collide with her public military identity. As the elevator rose, she thought about the Delta operators in the parking lot. They thought they were the tip of the spear, America's most elite warriors. They had no idea that beyond Delta, beyond SEAL Team 6, beyond all the units that made headlines, there were soldiers like her. Ghost operators who did the jobs too sensitive, too dangerous, or too politically volatile for even the acknowledged elite units. The conference room was sterile and windowless, with harsh fluorescent lighting and a single table surrounded by chairs. Maria was 10 minutes early, but she wasn't the first to arrive. A man in civilian clothes sat at the far end of the table, his back to the door, reading from a classified folder. "Captain Ramirez," he said without turning around. "Please, have a seat." Maria recognized the voice immediately, and her blood ran cold. Colonel James Morrison, her former handler from Task Force Phantom, a unit so secret it didn't have an official designation. What was he doing here? Morrison turned around, and Maria saw he'd aged considerably in the 18 months since she'd last seen him. His hair was completely gray now, and new lines creased his face. "Hello, Ghost 7, he said, using her operational call sign. "We need to talk about Stillwater. And about why you're really here." Maria sat down carefully, her mind racing. Something was wrong. Phantom operators were never recalled like this, never brought back into the official world. Once you went ghost, you stayed ghost until you retired or died. "Sir, I don't understand." "My orders were to maintain cover indefinitely." Morrison's expression was grim. "Plans change, Captain. Stillwater has become complicated. Someone leaked. Not the full details, thank God, but enough to cause problems. Senate Intelligence Committee is asking questions. They want answers about unauthorized operations in Pakistan." Maria's heart sank. Stillwater was the operation where everything had gone wrong before going right. Where she'd been forced to make impossible decisions that saved American lives but violated every international law on the books. How much do they know? Enough to be dangerous. Not enough to understand why it was necessary. Morrison slid a folder across the table. "There's going to be a hearing. Closed session, highest classification level. But here's the problem, they don't believe Phantom exists. They think Stillwater was a rogue Delta operation." Maria opened the folder and scanned the contents. Her name wasn't mentioned, Ghost 7 was never mentioned, but the operational details were accurate enough to be damaging. "What do you need me to do?" "Testify. Tell them the truth about Stillwater. Take responsibility." Maria looked up sharply. That would mean revealing Phantom. Breaking cover permanently. "I know what I'm asking," Morrison said quietly. "Your career as a ghost operator would be over. You'd go back to being just Captain Maria Ramirez, regular Army. But it would protect Delta from taking the blame for something they didn't do. And more importantly, it would protect Phantom's other operations from scrutiny." Maria understood. She was being asked to fall on her sword, to sacrifice her secret career to protect the larger program. It was exactly the kind of sacrifice ghost operators were expected to make. When? Tomorrow. 0900 hours. General Patricia Hayes will be leading the inquiry. She's tough but fair. Tell her the truth, and let the chips fall where they may. Morrison stood to leave, then paused at the door. Maria, I'm sorry it has to end this way. You were the best operator I ever ran. What you did in those caves, it saved hundreds of lives. Even if no one will ever know. After he left, Maria sat alone in the sterile room, staring at the folder. Tomorrow, she would walk into a room full of generals and senators and admit to actions that could end her career, possibly even land her in prison. She would have to reveal a side of herself that she'd kept hidden for years, behind bland uniforms and unremarkable ribbons. She thought again about the Delta operators in the parking lot, their sneering dismissal of her service. Tomorrow, they might learn how wrong they'd been. Or they might never know. Either way, Maria would do what she'd always done, complete the mission, whatever the cost. The next morning came too quickly. Maria had spent the night in temporary quarters on base, unable to sleep, running through possible testimony scenarios in her mind. By 06:30, she was already dressed and ready, her uniform pressed to perfection, every ribbon and badge precisely placed. She arrived at the secure facility where the hearing would take place, a nondescript building surrounded by multiple checkpoints and guards. Her credentials were verified 3 times before she was allowed into the waiting area. The same Delta Force operators from yesterday were there, dressed in their Class A uniforms now, looking sharp and professional. Maria's stomach dropped. Why were they here? The bearded one, she could see his name tape read, Sergeant First Class Thompson, noticed her immediately. His expression shifted from surprise to amusement. Well, look who it is, he said to his teammates. The PowerPoint Ranger is here too. Must be testifying about her harrowing experience with supply requisitions. Maria took a seat across the room, pulling out her phone to review her notes. But Thompson wasn't done. Seriously though, what are you doing here, Captain? This is a classified hearing about real operations. Did you get lost on your way to a diversity workshop? Maybe she's here to take notes, the scarred operator suggested. Someone has to write the after-action report, right? One of the guards, an older sergeant major, shifted uncomfortably at their behavior but said nothing. The Delta operators were untouchable, everyone knew that. Maria kept her eyes on her phone, but she was no longer reading. She was thinking about the caves, about the moment when she'd had to choose between following orders and saving lives. About the 12 Pakistani intelligence officers she'd neutralized to protect an American asset. About the 3 days of torture that followed her capture, and how she'd escaped, completed the mission, and extracted the asset anyway. Hey, I'm talking to you, Thompson said, his voice harder now. It's disrespectful to ignore a senior NCO. Didn't they teach you military courtesy in your online army courses? Before Maria could respond, the door to the hearing room opened. A young lieutenant emerged. Sergeant First Class Thompson. The panel will see your team now. The Delta operators filed in, Thompson throwing one last dismissive look at Maria. She heard him mutter to his teammate, bet they make us wait while they deal with whatever administrative issue she's here for. Alone in the waiting room except for the guards, Maria closed her eyes and centered herself. In 30 minutes, maybe less, her life would change irrevocably. Everything she'd built as a ghost operator would be revealed or destroyed. The door opened again 20 minutes later. The lieutenant looked at his clipboard. Captain Ramirez. There's been a change. General Hayes wants to see you in her office before the hearing. Follow me, please. This was unexpected. Maria followed the lieutenant down a series of secure corridors to an office marked with 3 stars. Inside, she found not just General Patricia Hayes but also the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Marcus Webb, and several other high-ranking officers she didn't recognize. But it was the figure standing by the window that made her heart skip. General David Chen, former commander of Joint Special Operations Command, the man who had personally recruited her for Task Force Phantom 7 years ago. "Captain Ramirez," General Hayes said, gesturing to a chair. "Please, sit. We need to discuss your testimony." Maria sat, maintaining her bearing despite her confusion. "Ma'am, I'm prepared to testify about Operation Stillwater as ordered." General Chen turned from the window. "The situation has changed, Ghost 7. 20 minutes ago, those Delta operators you're scheduled to testify alongside made some interesting claims about the Pakistan operation." Maria's confusion deepened. "Sir, I don't understand. Delta wasn't involved in Stillwater." "No," General Hayes said coldly, "but they're claiming they were. Specifically, they're claiming they ran the operation, that it was a sanctioned Delta mission that went sideways. They're throwing you under the bus, Captain." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Someone had leaked just enough information about Stillwater to make it seem like a Delta operation. The operators, probably Thompson's team, were claiming credit while positioning themselves to avoid any blame for the controversial aspects. "They don't know I was the actual operator," Maria said slowly. "Correct. They think you're here as some kind of administrative witness. Thompson's in there right now explaining how you were the intelligence officer who provided bad intel that got his team in trouble. He's painting quite a picture. Incompetent female officer nearly gets Delta Force killed with poor planning." Maria felt a cold fury building in her chest. They weren't just dismissing her service, they were stealing her sacrifice and using it against her. General Chen spoke up. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to testify exactly as planned. Tell them everything about Stillwater. But we're not going to reveal Task Force Phantom. Not yet." "Sir." General Hayes leaned forward. "Captain, what do you know about Operation Broken Summit?" Maria shook her head. "Nothing, ma'am. It's a hostage rescue mission in Syria. Highly classified, extremely dangerous. Delta's been planning it for months, but they keep hitting intelligence gaps. They need someone who can operate independently, someone who's been in similar situations." Hayes paused. "They specifically requested an intelligence officer with ground experience." Understanding dawned. "You want me to embed with Thompson's team?" "Without them knowing who you really are," General Chen confirmed. "Let them think you're just another intel officer. Complete the mission, fill their intelligence gaps with your real operational experience. Then, and only then, do we reveal the truth about Stillwater and your real role." It was brilliant and brutal. Maria would have to work alongside the men who'd mocked her, who were currently lying about her to Congress, and help them succeed while they continued to demean her. "What about the hearing? You'll testify that you were an intelligence analyst attached to a classified unit during Stillwater. Keep it vague. Let Thompson and his team hang themselves with their lies. When the time comes, we'll correct the record." General Hayes's smile was sharp. "With full documentation and helmet cam footage from your actual operation." Maria nodded slowly. "When do I report to Delta?" "Immediately after the hearing. Thompson's team ships out in 72 hours. General Chen moved closer. "Maria, I know this is asking a lot. These men have disrespected you and are now lying about your actions. Working with them will be difficult." "I've done worse for my country, sir." "Yes," he said quietly, "you have. That's why I know you can do this." An hour later, Maria sat in the hearing room, listening to Thompson finish his testimony. He was good, she had to admit. His lies were wrapped in just enough truth to be believable. He described a mission in Pakistan that bore some resemblance to Stillwater but painted himself as the hero and her, though he didn't know it, as the incompetent intelligence officer whose failures nearly cost American lives. When it was her turn to testify, Maria kept her answers short and technical. Yes, she had provided intelligence support for operations in Pakistan. No, she couldn't discuss specific units or missions beyond what was already in the record. Yes, there had been complications requiring difficult decisions. She watched Thompson and his team exchange smirks as she spoke. They thought she was covering for her failures, taking the blame like a good little officer. They had no idea she was setting them up for the greatest humiliation of their careers. After the hearing, Maria was formally assigned to Delta Force as an intelligence liaison for Operation Broken Summit. The paperwork was processed with unusual speed, and by afternoon, she was reporting to the Delta compound on the far side of Fort Benning. Thompson's reaction when he saw her was priceless. "You've got to be kidding me," he said, staring at the orders his team leader had just handed him. "They assigned her to us? The same incompetent officer who nearly got us killed in Pakistan?" Maria stood at attention, her face carefully neutral. "Sergeant First Class Thompson, I'm here to provide intelligence support for your mission. I'll do my best to ensure you have accurate, actionable information." "Your best?" Thompson laughed bitterly. "Your best nearly started a war with Pakistan. Your best got good operators killed." He was really selling the lie now, almost believing it himself. The scarred operator, Sergeant Martinez, she now knew, shook his head. This is what happens when the Army prioritizes diversity over competence. We get stuck with officers who can't cut it. "With all due respect," Maria said mildly, "I'm here to do a job." "My past performance." "Your past performance is exactly why we don't want you," Thompson interrupted. "But apparently, someone up the chain thinks we need a token female on this op. Fine. Just stay out of our way, Captain. Let the real warriors handle the dangerous stuff." Maria nodded. "Understood, Sergeant." As she was shown to her temporary workspace, a small office adjacent to the Delta planning room, Maria allowed herself a small smile. They wanted her to stay out of the way. Perfect. That would make it easier to do what she did best, operate in the shadows, gathering the intelligence they desperately needed while they focused on their bravado. She opened the classified briefing on Operation Broken Summit and began to read. 3 American aid workers held by ISIS remnants in Syria. A fortified compound in hostile territory. Multiple failed intelligence attempts to determine enemy strength and positions. Maria had infiltrated similar compounds alone, without support, using skills Delta Force didn't even know existed. Now she would use those skills to ensure Thompson's mission succeeded, even as he continued to mock her. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very experience they claimed she didn't have would save their lives. And when it was over, when the hostages were safe and the mission complete, the truth would finally come out. But first, she had a job to do. Maria pulled up satellite imagery of the target compound and got to work, planning how to get Thompson and his team the intelligence they needed without them ever knowing how she got it. The ghost operator was back in business, even if nobody knew it yet. 48 hours into mission prep, the Delta team's frustration was palpable. Every intelligence asset in Syria had come up empty. The compound where the hostages were held remained a black box, unknown number of guards, unknown defensive positions, unknown routines. Without that information, the mission was suicide. Maria sat in the planning room, watching Thompson and his team argue over satellite photos that showed nothing useful. She'd already identified 3 ways to gather the needed intelligence, but each would require revealing capabilities she wasn't supposed to have. "This is worthless," Martinez slammed his hand on the table. "We can't plan an insertion with no intel. We'd be going in blind." "Maybe our intel officer has some brilliant insights," Thompson said sarcastically, turning to Maria. "Captain, care to dazzle us with your expertise?" Maria stood and approached the planning board. The compound is a former Syrian army outpost. Based on the architecture and regional patterns, they'll have established fighting positions here, here, and here. She marked locations on the satellite image. The generator building suggests they're running significant electronics, probably communications equipment. That means nothing," Thompson interrupted. Guesswork isn't intelligence. We need eyes on target, actual reconnaissance. I agree, Maria said calmly. Which is why I recommend a solo reconnaissance insertion 48 hours before the main assault. The room erupted in laughter. Solo recon. Martinez wiped tears from his eyes. By who, you? Captain, this isn't a PowerPoint presentation. This is hostile territory crawling with ISIS fighters. I've operated in similar environments, Maria said. Where, in training? Thompson stood, towering over her. Captain, I don't know what fantasy world you live in, but this is real. Those are real terrorists with real guns who really want to kill Americans. Especially American women. You wouldn't last 5 minutes outside the wire. Maria met his gaze steadily. Then what do you propose? Because in 24 hours, you're supposed to brief General Hayes on your mission plan. Without intelligence, what exactly are you going to tell her? The room fell silent. She was right, and they knew it. Thompson's team leader, Major Reynolds, spoke for the first time. She has a point. We're out of options. But sending an untrained intel officer on a solo recon is insane. Then send me with her, a new voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Master Sergeant Kyle Cooper, one of Delta's most respected operators. Maria recognized him from her classified files, numerous successful operations, multiple Valor Awards, and most importantly, a reputation for independent thinking. Coop, you can't be serious, Thompson protested. Cooper entered the room, studying the planning board. I've been listening to you guys spin your wheels for 2 days. Maybe it's time to try something different. Besides, he glanced at Maria, something tells me the captain here might surprise us. Thompson scoffed. Based on what? Her stellar performance in Pakistan? Oh wait, that's right, she nearly got everyone killed with bad intel. Maria felt Cooper's eyes on her, evaluating. Unlike the others, he seemed to be actually looking at her, not just at her rank and gender. I'll take the risk, Cooper said finally. 48-hour recon. We insert tomorrow night, gather intel, extract before the main assault. Captain, you up for it? Yes, Master Sergeant. Thompson threw up his hands. This is insane. Reynolds, you can't authorize this. Major Reynolds was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. Do it. But Coop, she's your responsibility. If this goes sideways. It won't, Cooper said with confidence that surprised Maria. The meeting broke up with Thompson and his team stomping out in disgust. Cooper remained behind, studying the satellite imagery. Captain, a word. Maria approached cautiously. Cooper's voice was low. I've been in this business for 15 years. I've worked with a lot of intel officers. Most of them can barely handle a rifle, let alone operate in hostile territory. But you move different. You sit different. You look at those satellite images like someone who's been on the ground, not just in an office. Maria kept her expression neutral. I've had some unique training opportunities. Aha. Cooper wasn't buying it. Well, whatever your story is, I hope it's enough to keep us alive out there. Meet me at the arms room at 0500. We'll go over equipment and tactics. That night, Maria made a secure call from her quarters. Morrison. It's Ghost 7. I need you to temporarily unlock some of my sealed records. Just enough to explain advanced tactical training if questions arise. What's going on, Maria? She explained the situation. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. You're taking a hell of a risk. If something happens out there and you're forced to reveal your full capabilities. I know. But those hostages don't have time for Delta to fumble around in the dark. I can get the intelligence they need. And Cooper? He's suspicious but not a threat. I'll manage him. Morrison sighed. I'll unlock your advanced tactical school records. Nothing about Phantom, just enough to show you've had specialized training. Be careful, Maria. The next evening, Maria and Cooper prepared for insertion at a forward operating base near the Syrian border. She'd spent the day reviewing equipment and tactics with him, carefully displaying just enough competence to seem trained but not expert. Thompson's team was there to see them off, clearly hoping to witness her failure. "Last chance to back out, Captain," Thompson called as she checked her rifle. "No shame in admitting you're in over your head." Maria finished her equipment check and looked at him. "I'll see you in 48 hours with the intelligence you need, Sergeant." "If you're not dead or captured," Martinez added. "Hey, if ISIS gets you, try not to give up any classified information during your interrogation. I know how you intel types break easy." Cooper stepped between them. "That's enough. We have a job to do." As their helicopter lifted off into the Syrian night, Maria allowed herself to relax slightly. Soon she'd be in her element, operating in hostile territory, gathering intelligence through methods Delta couldn't imagine. "You good?" Cooper asked over the intercom. "Yes, Master Sergeant." "You know Thompson's an ass, right? He doesn't speak for all of us." Maria smiled behind her night vision goggles. "I know. But he's not entirely wrong. I did make mistakes in Pakistan." "True, though not the mistakes Thompson claimed." "We all make mistakes," Cooper said. "What matters is learning from them." They flew in silence for a while, the Syrian landscape rolling beneath them like a dark ocean. Finally, Cooper spoke again. "Can I ask you something? That bronze star you wear, what's it really for?" Maria considered her response carefully. "Classified operation. Can't discuss details." "But not a PowerPoint presentation?" "No. Not a PowerPoint presentation." Cooper nodded, seeming satisfied. "Good. Because where we're going, PowerPoint won't help us." The helicopter descended toward their insertion point, and Maria felt the familiar calm settle over her. For the next 48 hours, she'd be doing what she did best, moving unseen through hostile territory, gathering intelligence that others couldn't. Thompson thought she was a joke, a diversity hire playing soldier. In 2 days, he'd have the intelligence he desperately needed, though he'd never understand how she really got it. And sometime after that, when the truth about Stillwater came out, he'd learn just how wrong he'd been. But for now, there was only the mission. The helicopter touched down, and Maria and Cooper disappeared into the Syrian night, two shadows moving toward danger. Behind them, Thompson's team returned to their planning room, confident they'd seen the last of the incompetent intelligence officer. They had no idea what was coming. The Syrian compound materialized through Maria's night vision goggles like a cancer on the landscape. She and Cooper had been in position for 6 hours, observing from a concealed position on a ridgeline 500 meters away. What they'd seen so far wasn't good. "I count at least 30 fighters," Cooper whispered. "Double what intelligence estimated." Maria didn't respond immediately. Through her scope, she was tracking something more concerning, a pattern in the guards' movements that suggested military training. These weren't typical ISIS remnants. "Master Sergeant, look at the guard change at the South Tower. Notice anything?" Cooper shifted his optics. After a moment, he cursed softly. "Russian tactical doctrine. These guys have been trained by professionals." "Wagner Group, probably," Maria said. "Russian mercenaries have been operating in this region." "How the hell do you know about Wagner Group operations here?" "That's compartmented information." Maria silently cursed herself. Ghost operators were briefed on all regional players, but a regular intelligence officer wouldn't have that access. "Lucky guess based on regional analysis," she said lamely. Cooper gave her a long look but didn't press. "We need to get closer. The hostages could be in any of 3 buildings. Without confirmation of their location, Delta goes in blind." Maria had already identified which building held the hostages, the heat signatures and guard patterns made it obvious to someone with her experience. But she couldn't reveal that without raising more questions. I agree. But we'll need a distraction to get past the outer security. What kind of distraction? Maria pulled a small device from her pack. Micro-drone. Sounds like incoming mortar fire when it detonates. Should draw guards to the north while we move south. Cooper stared at the device. Where did you get experimental ordnance? This isn't standard issue. I have friends in acquisitions, Maria said, which was technically true. Task Force Phantom had access to equipment that didn't officially exist. Over the next hour, they prepared for infiltration. Maria let Cooper take the lead on planning, occasionally suggesting refinements that he readily accepted. She was careful to couch her expertise as theoretical knowledge and training scenarios. At 0200, they made their move. The micro-drone performed perfectly, sending guards scrambling to defensive positions on the north perimeter. Maria and Cooper slipped through the shadows, her movements fluid and practiced. Too practiced. Jesus, Cooper breathed as they reached the compound wall. You move like. Like what? Maria asked innocently, though she knew exactly what he meant. She moved like an operator with years of experience infiltrating hostile positions. Nothing. Let's go. They scaled the wall and dropped into the compound. Maria automatically swept left while Cooper went right, perfect tactical synchronization without communication. Another slip. Inside the compound, Maria's instincts screamed at her to take point, but she forced herself to follow Cooper's lead. They cleared 2 buildings methodically, finding supply rooms and communications equipment but no hostages. Then they hit a snag. Guards were returning from the false alarm, cutting off their route to the 3rd building. We're boxed in, Cooper whispered. 6 tangos between us and the target building. Maria assessed the situation instantly. In her mind, she'd already mapped 3 ways to neutralize the guards silently, but a regular intel officer wouldn't know those techniques. What if she started, then deliberately stumbled over her words. I mean, could we maybe circle around through the motor pool? Cooper looked where she indicated and saw what she'd already identified, a covered route that would bypass the guards entirely. Good eye, Captain. Let's move. They reached the 3rd building without incident. Through a cracked window, they confirmed what Maria had known all along, 3 American hostages, alive but in poor condition, guarded by 4 men. Jackpot, Cooper whispered, recording everything with his helmet cam. We need guard rotations, schedules, everything we can. He was cut off by shouts from across the compound. A guard had discovered their entry point. Time to go, Maria said, already moving. But their exit route was compromised. Guards were converging from multiple directions, flashlights sweeping the darkness. Cooper drew his suppressed pistol. We might have to fight our way out. Maria's mind raced. She could eliminate the threats easily, but that would blow her cover completely. Yet if they were captured or killed, the hostages would die. Master Sergeant, trust me, she said quietly. Follow my lead and don't ask questions. Before Cooper could respond, Maria moved. Not with the hesitancy of an intelligence officer, but with the lethal grace of a ghost operator. She flowed between shadows, using angles and concealment that shouldn't have been visible in the darkness. Cooper followed, stunned, as Maria led them through what seemed like impossible gaps in the enemy search pattern. When a guard appeared directly in their path, she disabled him with a blood choke so smooth and silent that Cooper barely saw it happen. They reached the wall as alarms began wailing throughout the compound. Maria boosted Cooper up, then climbed with a speed that defied her supposed lack of field experience. Run, she commanded, and they sprinted across open ground as bullets cracked overhead. They reached their hidden vehicle, a beat-up Toyota that blended with local traffic, and Maria took the wheel without asking. She drove like a native, taking routes through the village that avoided checkpoints Cooper didn't even know existed. Only when they were safely back across the border did Cooper finally speak. "Who the hell are you?" Maria gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Captain Maria Ramirez, Military Intelligence." "Bullshit. I've operated with every elite unit in the U.S. military. Nobody moves like that without years of specialized training. So I'll ask again, who are you?" Maria was saved from answering by their arrival at the forward operating base. Thompson's team was waiting, clearly hoping to hear about their failure. "Well?" Thompson demanded. "Did our intel officer get you killed, Coop?" Cooper looked at Thompson for a long moment, then at Maria. "No. She got us everything we needed. Hostage location confirmed, guard positions mapped, patrol schedules recorded. Your mission is a go." Thompson's face went through several emotions: surprise, suspicion, and finally anger. "You got lucky." "Watch the helmet cam footage," Cooper said coldly. "Then tell me about luck." As Thompson's team gathered around a monitor to review the reconnaissance, Cooper pulled Maria aside. "I don't know what your story is, Captain. But those moves in the compound? That's not intel school training. That's not even Ranger school. That's something else entirely." Maria met his gaze. "The intelligence is good. The hostages are where I said they are. Does the rest matter?" "It does to me." Cooper stepped closer. "Because in 36 hours, my brothers are going to assault that compound based on your intel. If there's something about you that affects their safety, I need to know." Maria was silent for a long moment, then made a decision. "I can't tell you everything. But I promise you this, the intelligence is accurate, and I've done this before. Your team will succeed if they follow the plan." Cooper studied her face, then nodded slowly. "All right. But after this is over, you and I are going to have a conversation." As Cooper walked away, Maria noticed General Hayes had arrived, accompanied by General Chen. They were here for the mission briefing, but the way they looked at her suggested they were also here for something else. The truth was coming, whether she was ready or not. Inside the briefing room, Thompson was strangely quiet as he presented the reconnaissance data. The helmet cam footage had shown not just the intelligence gathering, but glimpses of Maria's capabilities. Everyone had questions, but the mission took precedence. "Outstanding work," General Hayes said after the briefing. "This intelligence gives us everything we need. Captain Ramirez, Master Sergeant Cooper, well done." "Thank you, ma'am," Maria said quietly, aware of Thompson's eyes burning into her. As the briefing concluded and teams prepared for the assault, Thompson cornered Maria in the hallway. "I don't know what game you're playing," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "But nobody transforms from incompetent desk jockey to super soldier overnight. So either you've been lying about who you are, or that helmet cam footage was staged." "Neither," Maria said calmly. "I'm exactly who I've always been. You just never bother to look past your assumptions." Thompson's face flushed. "After this mission, I'm going to find out exactly what your deal is. And when I do—" "Sergeant Thompson," General Chen's voice cut through the threat. "Don't you have mission prep to complete?" Thompson snapped to attention. "Yes, sir." As he stormed off, General Chen turned to Maria. "Walk with me, Captain." They strolled through the base in silence until they reached a secure area. "The mission will succeed," Chen said finally. "The hostages will come home. And then, Captain Ramirez, it will be time for the truth. All of it." Maria nodded. "I understand, sir. I hope Thompson and his team are ready to understand as well. The real story of Pakistan. The real story of who saved their reputation while they threw you under the bus." Chen smiled grimly. "It should be an interesting reveal." As Maria watched Delta Force prepare for their mission using intelligence she'd risked her life to gather, she thought about the coming storm. Thompson thought she was a fraud. Soon, he'd learn she was something far more dangerous, a ghost who'd been standing right in front of him all along. The mission clock counted down, and Maria prepared for one more performance, playing the nervous intel officer while warriors she'd trained prepared for battle, never knowing their guardian angel wore the same uniform they'd mocked. Part 5. The mission was flawless. Maria watched from the Tactical Operations Center as Delta Force executed their assault on the Syrian compound. Every piece of intelligence she'd provided proved accurate. Guards were exactly where she'd said they'd be. The hostages were recovered without a single American casualty. Thompson's team performed brilliantly, their execution precise and lethal. Outstanding work, everyone, Major Reynolds announced as the helicopters carrying the team and rescued hostages crossed back into friendly airspace. Mission accomplished. The operations center erupted in restrained celebration. Maria remained quiet, noting how Thompson kept glancing at her from across the room. The success clearly bothered him, it didn't fit his narrative of her incompetence. 2 hours later, the team was back at base. The hostages were receiving medical treatment, already sharing tearful phone calls with their families. It should have been a moment of pure triumph. Instead, Thompson confronted Maria outside the medical facility. "You got lucky," he said, though his words lacked conviction. "That intel could have been wrong. You could have gotten my entire team killed." "But I didn't," Maria replied simply. Cooper approached, still in his assault gear. "Thompson, give it a rest. She did good." "She did impossible," Thompson shot back. "Nobody goes from Pakistan failure to Syria success without something fishy going on." "Sergeant Thompson, Master Sergeant Cooper, Captain Ramirez," a staff officer called out. "General Hayes requests your immediate presence in Conference Room 1. The three of them walked in tense silence. Maria knew what was coming. The mission was over. Time for truth. Conference Room 1 was packed. General Hayes sat at the head of the table, flanked by General Chen and several other senior officers. The Joint Chiefs representative was there, along with members of the Senate Intelligence Committee who'd attended the earlier hearing. "Sit," General Hayes commanded. As they took their seats, Maria noticed a laptop connected to the conference room's main display. General Chen was loading a video file. "Gentlemen," Hayes began, "we're here to discuss Operation Stillwater and some claims made during recent testimony." Thompson straightened. "Ma'am, I stand by my testimony. The Pakistan operation was not conducted by Delta Force," Hayes interrupted. "Nor was Captain Ramirez the intelligence officer who supposedly failed you." The room fell silent. "I don't understand," Thompson said slowly. General Chen clicked play on the video. Helmet camera footage filled the screen, but not from any Delta Force operator. The timestamp showed 3 years ago, the location was Pakistan, and the lone figure moving through a cave complex was unmistakably Captain Maria Ramirez. "What you're watching," Chen narrated, "is classified footage from Operation Stillwater. The actual operation, conducted by a single operator from Task Force Phantom, a unit that doesn't officially exist. On screen, Maria engaged multiple hostiles with lethal efficiency. The footage showed her discovering the American asset who'd been marked for execution, fighting her way out against overwhelming odds, and continuing the mission even after taking significant wounds." Thompson's face had gone white. That's impossible. "The officer you accused of incompetence," Hayes continued, "infiltrated a Pakistani intelligence compound alone, eliminated 12 hostile intelligence officers who were about to execute an American asset, and held a defensive position for 5 hours until extraction arrived. She was captured during exfiltration and tortured for 3 days before escaping and completing the mission." The footage switched to medical documentation. Photos of Maria's injuries, the scars hidden beneath her uniform. Cooper made a sound of recognition, he'd seen one of those scars during their mission preparation. "The Bronze Star you mocked," Chen added. "Awarded for actions so classified they can't be publicly acknowledged. The Purple Heart you said came from a paper cut." Shrapnel from an IED that detonated during her escape from Pakistani custody. But you said. Thompson stammered, looking at Maria.